Hello, everyone. Jose and Nick here, coming back to you from Moneyline MMA. We have another week of exciting fights. We have UFC 278, Kamaru Usman versus Leon Edwards 2. This fight's going to take place at the Vivint Arena in Salt Lake City on August 20th at 9 p.m. Central District Time. The first fight of the night is going to be a light heavyweight bout between Tyson Pedro versus Harry Hunsucker. The second fight of the night is going to be a heavyweight bout between Marcin Tybura versus Alexander Romanov. Your third fight of the night is going to be a bantamweight bout, and we have the number 3 ranked former featherweight champ Jose Aldo versus the rising contender number 6 Merab Veleshvili. And for your co-main event, we have the number 6 Paulo Costa versus the returning former middleweight champ Luke Rockhold. And for the main event, we have the reigning champ Kamaru Usman versus Leon Edwards for the welterweight strap. Let's go. And for the first fight of the night, we're going to have a light heavyweight bout between Harry Hunsucker versus Tyson Pedro. Right now, Tyson Pedro is a huge betting favorite at minus 900, while Harry Hunsucker is a plus 520 underdog. This is an exciting fight, Nick. To me, Tyson Pedro is running heavily high right now, even though he's only coming off one win against Isaac Villanova, while Harry Hunsucker, he himself is riding a 2-fight losing streak. And to me, I think these odds are huge, man. I don't know. Even though Harry Hunsucker, he doesn't have the best record, he's 7-5. I still don't think that these odds are justified enough for the fans to think that an 8-3 Tyson Pedro would be a heavy favorite by this much. To me, that just says a lot what people are thinking of Tyson Pedro. I mean, the guy overall, he's a submission artist thus far. He has 5 out of his 8 wins come via submission. So I think it's safe to say that a lot of people may be seeing that be the way Harry Hunsucker is to lose if it were to go to that. He doesn't have submission losses on his record, but he himself could be falling vulnerable to Tyson Pedro's submission game. What are your thoughts on this, Nick?
Man, to be quite honest, I'm kind of disappointed that this is on the main card. This is kind of a sleeper fight. I don't even think this is good enough to be the main event of the prelims. I don't know. I think Harry Hunsucker's for sure on the last strands of his UFC career. If he can't get a win here, he struggled pretty heavily. I mean, Tai Tuivasa is a tough guy to fight, but he got knocked out immediately in the first round. Not seeing too much, and then now he's dropping down to light heavyweight. So that's a good. I agree with that move on his part. He's struggling at heavyweight. He's got some fast hands. He's gotten destroyed in the first round of each 3 of his first 3 fights in the UFC. But I just think he's going to continue to struggle against Tyson Pedro. I'm a little bit. I would have been more nervous because he had come off of that loss for Shogun Rua in 2018, and he didn't have a UFC fight until earlier this year. So at least having seen him beat Ike Villanueva in the first round gives me some confidence that Pedro is still in the very top shape of his life. So, that being said, I kind of see why the odds are this heavy. It just seems like Tyson Pedro kind of dominates all sides of the game here. Harry Hunsucker might have a little bit more striking output, but he doubles the strikes absorbed that Tyson Pedro, in fact, almost triples. So, I mean, to me, this is just going to be one of those situations where Tyson Pedro kind of proves that he doesn't need to be here taking the fights of guys that are on the last strand of the UFC career, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's right. And to my surprise right now here, I see that, Harry Hunsucker does have a higher significant strikes landed per minute compared to Tyson Pedro. And something that really sticks out to me as well is the wins that Tyson Pedro does have on his record. I mean, early in his UFC career, his first 2 fights against Khalil Roundtree and Paul Craig, he finished both of them in the first round. To me, I think that's really what rides him high right now. I mean, he has lost to bigger names, to big names as well, like as you mentioned, Mauricio Rua, OSP, and Lair Latifi. Well, Harry Hunsucker, as you mentioned too, coming down from heavyweight, this dude's faced nothing but monsters up there too. He's lost to Jared Vandera and Tai Tuivasa and Justin Tafa. These are names, serious names, especially Tai Tuivasa. We're gonna see him fight Cyril Gane in Paris, France soon. That being said, yeah, he Harry Hunsucker can take straight up damage, but like you said, I don't know why this fight necessarily really is on the card. And maybe just a lot of people are viewing it as this big guy coming down is going to get beaten up by this other smaller guy that's already had a little bit more success. But I definitely think the money line should be closer on this. And I'm not going to lie, like Harry Hunsucker, he has, what does he really have left to lose? I mean, I would definitely maybe not bet on him, but I definitely would not be so shy of him and his other strengths that he brings to the table. I mean, this guy alone, um, he does have 3.83 significant strikes landed per minute. And other than that, his submission average actually, he goes for submissions a little more than Tyson Pedro. He has a 2.39 submission average versus Tyson Pedro's 1.31. But again, everything else, he lacks that. He has no takedown defense. He doesn't do any takedowns at all himself in general. So in the wrestling department, I think a lot of people are going to look at Tyson Pedro, and that's why I think he's going to win this one via submission.
Yeah, honestly, Jose, I think that's a good pick. I think submission is very much in the cards. I mean, Harry Hunsucker has shown no ability to defend himself. Although Tai Tuivasa, Jared Vetera, these guys are strikers, so it's not like he's really had much a chance to defend himself against takedowns. But I don't know. I get what you're coming from, but maybe the odds shouldn't be quite this crazy different. Minus 900 is a lot. But I don't know, man. I think Harry Hunsucker is destined to be on the cutting block. So I'm heavily going to be applying Tyson Pedro in the parlays this week.
And you guys heard it there, both Nick and I for Tyson Pedro.
To follow up that light heavyweight bout, we got some big heavyweights coming in. We've got Marcin Tybura fighting Alexander Romanov. I'm excited to see this one. Alexander Romanov, this is going to be by the way, this is going to be a big step up from this first fight of the card. Nothing against those guys, but I think Tybura and Romanov are both guys that can bring it, and they will. Romanov sitting at the minus 430 favorite slot right now, which is pretty heavy against a guy as good as Tybura sitting at plus 300 underdog value. I like that. From a betting perspective, Tybura is some crazy value to get plus 300 against almost anyone, except, of course, the very top dogs in this division. But Jose, I also can't deny the fact that Romanov has been slaughtering everybody he fights. Outside the one matchup where he had a split decision win against Juan Espino. That was an interesting fight, a little bit of an outlier because the other 4 fights that he's had under the UFC promotion have ended early, 3 of them by submission wins. Granted, some guys that are fighter previously, Harry Hunsucker couldn't beat Chase Sherman, Jared Vanderaa. Interesting to see some of these guys, fight obviously the other lower end of the heavyweight division, but Alexander Romanov completely dusted him. So, yeah, I don't know, Jose. I'm curious to see what your thoughts are, but in the end, Romanov looking like he's going to continue his heavyweight streak here.
Yeah, without a doubt, Nick. You and I were talking about this earlier. I actually had a trouble actually deciding between which one of these guys to go with. I mean, Myson Tybura, dudes look nothing but phenomenal up until that loss to Alexander Volkov. But again, Alexander Volkov, he's a phenomenal striker, and really, what this fight was, he just got outmatched via striking, just losing to a unanimous decision. While Alexander Romanov, he himself is a great striker as well, but he also has strong grappling, 9 submissions on his record come via win. So 9 out of 16 wins come via submission. And to me, the equalizer right here is the heavyweight power to knock them out. That's something that I think Marcin Tybura is going to have to bring to the table is some finishing power. I mean, he has finishes over Walt Harris and Greg Hardy, 2 big dudes. And not only that, he also was able to go the distance against Ben Rothwell. So he's shown that he can hang up there with some of the top of the food chain. Not necessarily top 5 guys. Ben Rothwell was at one point, but not anymore. And while Alexander Romanov, yeah, he's making his path up the heavyweight rankings, and that 16-0 looks really nice. And I can see why he's the favorite. But as I'm looking more into it, to me, Myson Tybura actually looks like a very attractive underdog as well. You know what? And to me personally, I was leaning towards Alexander Romanov, but the more I look at it, I do think Tyson Tarboro is going to be Alexander Romanov's biggest challenge in the UFC, and that's why I am leaning towards his way. He himself, what he brings to the table is 3.65 significant strikes landed per minute, not far off from Alexander Romanov's 4.23. And both overall, Ty Burrow can absorb a lot of punches. 3.44 versus Alexander Romanov's 1.35. So Romanov is really going to need to come in and bring in the power to put Tybura out. I don't know if this fight's actually going to go all 3 rounds. I do expect one of these guys to go lights out. And with an up and rising star like Alexander Romanov, I mean Tybura has put stops to that, like with Sergey Spivak in the past. He was able to finish and beat him via unanimous decision, and that if he could be smart enough to go to decision, but again, the way Alexander Romanov fights, he's a finisher, and I think Tybura will be good enough to finish him instead, because that's the game that's going to be played at this heavyweight level. Someone's going to go out. Think about it this way: Francis Ngannou. If you're going against Francis Ngannou, you do not want to go all 5 rounds with him at all either, though, because I mean, the dude, he's been showing now that he can win it, and I don't want to get too sidetracked off of this, but you saw what Rosenstrike tried to do against Francis Ngannou, is put his lights out right away. And that's something that I think Tybura may come into this. He's going to be like, I don't want to, fight this guy on the feet all 5 rounds, because it could be a split decision win, a split decision loss, or win, depending who you're going for. And it's going to be a close one. So I do lean towards Tybura in this fight, more because of his experience and the names he's gone against. And I like the underdogs, man. I'm a big underdog guy. I was leaning against Alexander Romanov before this, but the more I looked into it right now, I'm going to go with the underdog, Tybura.
There's definitely some value there. I think he's one of the more live underdogs here on this card, but in the end, I'm just not seeing enough. There are some excuses that could be made for some of his past losses. No one blames him for being knocked out by Derek Lewis. Went the distance with Fabricio Werdum, who's a legend in the sport. So I can totally respect those things. But seeing him get knocked out by Shamil in 2019 and Sakai to follow that up later in the year, in the first round, nonetheless, is just a little bit concerning to me. I think he's got a great takedown defense. So at first thought, it's like, okay, he shouldn't have to worry as much about Romanov's takedown ability. But I think if anything, it might get into his head a little bit. I think if Romanov kind of does a couple of feint takedowns and just comes with a hook or an uppercut or something, he might catch Tybura and just knock him out straight outright with one of those moves. So yeah, I think I agree that, like you said, the fight may not go the distance. I'm gonna go so far as to say that Romanov will win this fight by KO.
I like that, Nick. And hey, man, I'm going to go the opposite end, and I'm just going to say I'm going to go Tybura, KO. So there you guys have it. Both Nick and I have KOs for these heavyweights, but just different guys. And for the next fight of the night, we have an exciting bantamweight bout between the former featherweight champ Jose Aldo versus up and rising contender Merab Velishvili. Right now, Jose Aldo is the betting underdog at minus 102, while Merab Velishvili is the betting favorite at minus 125. This guy's an up and coming star, and a lot of people see it. In fact, they're giving the former champ, he's the close underdog in this, Nick. And I think Jose Aldo still has a lot to prove. Not a lot to prove, I should say, but he still has a lot to showcase. I mean, the dude actually isn't that old. Granted, he had a long career. He is only 35 right now. That's 30s in MMA. That's where a lot of fighters start really hitting their prime. And I do think Jose Aldo can make a run at the bantamweight title. A lot of times people view it where people start dropping weight as they get older. In their UFC careers, that means that's a bad sign. For example, Frankie Edgar or BJ Penn, they're just going down just to maybe it's a little easier on them. But no, with Jose Aldo, he's shown that he can stay competitive with the lighter guys. Like, for example, when he went unanimous decision against Rob Font, that was and Pedro Munoz, he's showing his dominance, and he also went to decision against Marlon Vera. So Jose Aldo has been showing that he can definitely keep up with these light guys, and then moving forward too, Murad Valishvili, he himself has put on a spectacular UFC run. He himself is coming off a long win streak, which includes the names of Cody Stanman, John Dudson, former contender as well, and Marlon Morales, another former contender. So he is beating guys that have challenged for the title, but he's never fought against someone who has been a featherweight reigning champ like Jose Aldo. So I'm a little surprised to see he's the betting favorite, but I think a lot of people are probably looking more at the more younger guy that's coming up. That's the way I'm seeing it. I think they're just going with the younger guy that's putting on a win streak. But again, Jose Aldo, don't count him out. He's not that old, and he has a win streak going himself.
Yeah, this is great matchmaking. If you ask me, Jose. Jose Aldo's got another win streak going after losing to Petr Yan in 2020. He came back, but he beat Chito Vera. I mean, it's really impressive to me. Beat Rob Font, and what's interesting to me too is he did not have as much volume as you'd expect to be able to beat Rob Font. He just got those great punches in, got 2 knockdowns, and ended up getting the decision win. Jose Aldo's really showing everything that it's going to take to get another title shot. And Valishvili, he's doing great as well. He's beating Cody Stamen. A lot of these decision wins. It's kind of crazy to see how many unanimous decision wins he had stacked up in a row against some good fighters too. Casey Kenny is a great fighter to beat. He got 12 takedowns in that fight. So, I was going to mention that too. He fought Gustavo Lopez and got 13 takedowns. So he does have that over 7 takedown average in the UFC fights, but it's kind of skewed to having over 10 in a couple of fights, and then he'll have like 4 or 5 against most people. And against Jose Aldo, I don't think that's too big of a concern. Jose Aldo's historically been good against stuffing takedowns, and he has not been submitted, at least by anyone that I can see in the UFC. So it's not a concern for Jose Aldo really at this point to be submitted. I think it's just going to come down to who's got the boxing, and I get that maybe the stats show Dvalishvili, okay, he's got 4.26, strikes landed a minute. That's pretty solid. Beat Marlon Moraes with a KO last year in September. That's pretty impressive. Don't get me wrong. But we're talking about one of the greats of this sport, a guy who's been around since 2008, before this was even known as the UFC. I mean, come on. We're taking Jose Aldo here, Jose. At least I am. I think that's he's going to continue his streak here, and I think part of it too is the motivation is in his favor. Valishvili is great, but he's a little bit more of a prospect. Not to say that he's super young, but he's Jose Aldo has been there, done that, and I think he knows that one more win is going to be just about all it takes to get another title shot.
Yeah, absolutely, Nick. And to add a little more on that, I do think this may be, I know I said Jose has a lot left in him, but I kind of think this may be one of the his final runs for a title, because if he loses to Marab, I don't know. He may be a couple wins again, getting back in the picture, but I can easily see him falling off and then just start feeding him up and rising guys, how they normally do the UFC model. Some guys fall from grace and start giving them these new challengers that move up the rankings as well. But like you mentioned, Jose does have amazing takedown defense. So reference back Chad Mendes when he fought him both times. Chad Mendes was struggling to take him down. And Chad Mendes has historically been a great wrestler in the featherweight division. Strong D1 college wrestling. And the problem that Jose Aldo does face the most, that I worry a little bit in facing Merab, is the striking, like you mentioned. The 3 losses that Jose Aldo had in a row were to Alexander Volkanovski, Marlon Morales, and Petr Yan. All are predominantly strikers, and again, Volkanovski, one of the best as well. So that being said, I think this fight's just going to be straight up stand-up game. Both guys only have 1 submission on their records. So this fight is definitely going to be on the feet. And the fact that Jose Aldo does have a slight reach advantage, he has a 2-inch reach advantage, I think he's going to play that to his game and land a few more strikes, especially if he also stays strong on his leg kicks. We can reference when he fought Uriah Faber and Chad Mendes as well. He has strong leg kicks that he just chops you down all day. And I can see that playing a big factor against Marab. Marab's going to have to deal with some of Jose Aldo's leg kicks and striking that's heavily comparable. I mean, Marab's definitely going to try to take him down. A few times, multiple times throughout the fight, most likely. But every time I'll see Jose Aldo stuffing them down. And when it comes to the striking, I do see Jose having that slight edge again. Unless you did bring up that even that Rob does have a higher striking percentage of strikes landed per minute. But I think overall what beats this is Jose Aldo's fight IQ and experience. I think nothing beats that. The dude, like we mentioned, he's making another run at a bantam at another division, the bantamweight division, a smaller division, and he's been looking nothing but phenomenal since he's came there. And I just think he's just playing the game right. He's smart. He's been there before, and he's just doing what he did before at featherweight, now at bantamweight, and he's defeated young up and coming guys like this in the past. And it's so to me, I'm gonna go with Jose Aldo as well. Again, this is a close one. The money line is heavily close. He is minus 102, but I'm definitely gonna go with Jose. I feel pretty good about this one, Nick.
I love it, Jose. Yeah, and I think it's one of those fights that could be ended early too. I think there's a good chance that Jose Aldo is not going to want to sit and fight for 15 minutes and get his butt kicked. He's going to want to go in there and end that. So I think there might be another chance. I'm not quite going to be betting on it though. I'm just going to be keeping Jose Aldo. He's a slight underdog, so I'm going to be just keeping him on the betting. Most likely a parlay as well, but I don't think I'm quite as ballsy enough to go for a certain decision there or for a certain win method.
I totally agree with you on that, Nick. I was actually going to say, like, if I were to choose Jose Aldo to win this, it will definitely be by unanimous decision, all three rounds, though, for me specifically, just because, again, his IQ is that high up where I don't know if he's going to want to jump in and try to sacrifice anything and throw killer shots. Like, that's what he tried to do against Conor McGregor, and he literally got knocked out in 12 seconds. So, but again, this was an emotional Jose Aldo back in the day in 2015. Today, we have a veteran, smart, cool collective Jose Aldo. He's almost like a samurai of the division. He's just been in it. He's got the scars. He has the resume, the big name. And that being said, I do think it's going to go unanimous decision just because all his 3 wins in the bantamweight division have gone via unanimous decision. And same with Marab. Marab is mostly he did come off a TKO, but most of his wins are via unanimous decision. And it's just going to be, I think, a game of who's going to land the most strikes by the end of the 3 rounds. And I'm personally taking Jose Aldo with that. So you can throw me Jose down winning this by unanimous decision.
For your co-main event of the evening at UFC 278, we've got 2 middleweight fighters coming in, Paulo Costa and Luke Rockhold. This is going to be an interesting one, seeing Paulo Costa coming off his loss against Vettori. He is minus 310, a pretty heavy favorite against Luke Rockhold, a guy with a big name in the UFC who's fought and won the belt. But then briefly lost it to Michael Bisping. But that's fine. He still can say that he's been a UFC champion, and he is now going to be dropping to the middleweight. This is going to be fascinating. That's one of the points I wanted to make, Jose, is just that he took a couple losses to Yoel Romero and Jan Blachowicz back in 2018, 2019, and he took a little bit of a break. And a lot of people think he's going to struggle coming out of the break. And I didn't necessarily have that inclination, but it's, to me, the main thing I'm thinking about here is how's that cut going to go? That's a pretty tough cut for a 37-year-old to do. And I'm kind of almost willing to say I need to wait to the scales to see where I'm officially at with this one.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. I think maybe Luke Rockhold, personally, I don't know if he'll have a struggle making 185, even though he is a bit tall, like a bit bigger than Paulo Costa to some degree in terms of height and reach advantage. He has a 5-inch reach advantage over Paulo Costa, and his leg reach is 5.5 inches longer than Paulo Costa. So you know that he's going to be like Luke Rockhold historically is known for throwing great kicks. He's finished fights throwing those kicks. So I see that playing a big role as his kicking game and his reach advantage. But in terms of cutting down and making the weight. I'm not too worried. I think I just saw an interview with him not long ago, and he was looking pretty shredded. I mean, Luke Rockhold, whenever there's an opportunity for him to have his shirt off and show off his abs, he takes advantage of it. And from what I saw in the video, he looked pretty mean, lean, and shredded. And Paulo Costa, that's the one. I'm actually more worried about him, though. I don't know if Luke Rockhold's going to be too big. I think Paulo Costa is going to be the one that's too big. This guy historically has been known to miss weight and be big. Like, look at the Melvin Vettori fight, like, holy cow. And Paulo Costa, he needs to lay off the wine and he needs to get serious and do a weight cut because this dude is a machine. But if he can't make weight, he needs to might as well go up to 205 because he doesn't have the height over or the reach over Luke Rockhold, but he definitely has the muscle and explosiveness. Paulo Costa was slightly bigger than Yoel Romero, but he's in terms of muscle and being built like a brick, identical to Yoel Romero. And not only that, he's extremely athletic and flexible. So he's going to be very comparable in terms of striking to Luke Rockhold. And the one thing I worry about is the power that Paulo Costa will bring. The dude is explosive, Nick. I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but Luke Rockhold, yeah, he's not been seen for 3 years, and he is the former champ. But I personally feel like a lot of these guys at middleweight have been looking bigger than what they did when Luke Rockhold was a champion. He beat Chris Weidman, and he lost to Michael Bisping. Those two guys, put them next to Paulo Costa, and you'll be thinking differently. Like, whoa, like the middleweight division looks slightly different than it did a few years ago. That's just my opinion on it, Nick.
Yeah, no, and those are some great points because I think part of why Costa was able to beat Romero in 2019 is because of his explosiveness and his ability to use that to get away from the clinch and the takedown situations. Yoel Romero was 1 for 4 in his takedown attempts in that fight, and I think that just ever so slightly edged it towards Costa and his ability to be explosive and get himself out of situations. In a lot of cases, having a 5-inch reach disadvantage would be pretty significant. But for Paulo Costa, he's one of those rare guys where I don't know if it matters as much. I'm not too worried about him getting taken down by any means. And he kind of wants to get in that close range, and he can absolutely slam a home run. In one punch, he could knock Rockhold out. And that's been another main concern outside of his time off is the fact that he's been knocked out by Blachowicz. Romero, who beat Rockhold months before Costa went and beat Romero. So if you want to play the who's beat who game, then Costa wins that game as well. Like you said, Costa is a big dude, and it is also worth watching his weight cut and making sure that he looks good and he doesn't look completely, lost all of his energy and drained from the cut, and he has no ability to put up his top level game in the fight. As long as everything goes his way, it seems like Costa is set up here to get a nice win against a legend of the sport. And I think there's almost zero chance that this fight goes the full 15 minutes, Jose. I'm not sure about you, but Luke Rockhold almost never goes to the judges. If he does, it's a super rare circumstance. And I don't think this is going to be one of those rare circumstances. I'm going to take Costa by KO.
Nick, that's a great pick. To be honest, I'm gonna have to agree with you. If this fight, I don't think it's gonna go the distance, and I definitely see Paulo Costa winning it. The dude's just so powerful and explosive. I can see him knocking out or slash TK on Luke Rockhold for like you said, Yoel Romero, Jan Blachowicz. They both did it, and both guys again were either bigger or just more muscular and thicker than Luke Rockhold, and both have strong power. Yoel Romero and Jan Blachowicz, power. Paulo Costa, he has power. Michael Bisping, he's shown, I guess, he has power. He knocked out Luke Rockhold. He did clip him, and Luke Rockhold didn't. He was a last minute replacement, and Luke Rockhold did not really prep for Michael Bisping when he lost to him. But yeah, I mean, Paulo Costa, he throws more. He throws 6.85 significant strikes per minute compared to Luke Rockhold's 4.18. And not only that, Paulo Costa absorbs 7.02 significant strikes per minute, while Luke Rockhold absorbs 2.43. And that was shown in the Yoel Romero fight. I mean, Yoel Romero was throwing heavy bombs at Paulo Costa. And even in the fight, Paulo Costa was just smiling at him and just stepping forward. And that's going to be a big problem for Luke Rockhold. Luke Rockhold himself even said, punching Yoel Romero is like punching a brick wall. And I think that's what it's going to feel like when he punches Paulo Costa. Paulo Costa is going to absorb a lot of his hits, and Paulo Costa is going to be throwing a high volume. That's the biggest thing that worries me for Luke Rockhold. I almost think he may be a little too much for Luke Rockhold, and I would love to see Luke Rockhold prove us wrong. He's the former champ, and yeah, he could pull it off, but I think it's no question why he's the underdog. He's been inactive. He has a questionable chin, and not only that, I do think he's just going to be the leaner guy and smaller, but just lengthier. Paulo Costa, that I don't think that'll scare him at all. He's going to want to just close the distance and try to knock Luke Rockhold out the same way Yoel Romero did. Yoel Romero just blitzed him and knocked him out. And I don't see this playing any different. Luke Rockhold's just been too inactive for too long that it's just hard to see what improvements he's really made outside of the gym during this 3-year layoff. So for this fight, yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you. I'm gonna have to go with Paulo Costa, and I hope Paulo Costa makes weight come Friday night.
Sounds like we're both agreeing then on Costa here. And yeah, specifically by KO in the books for the betting side of things. We'll be exploring that at the end of the show.
And now for your main event of this pay-per-view event, we have the reigning champ, Kamaru Usman, versus Leon Edwards in a rematch in the years of the making. Right now, Kamaru Usman is the betting favorite at minus 400, while Leon Edwards is the betting underdog at plus 285. Nick, it's been a minute since we've seen Leon Edwards come in as the betting underdog. Historically, this guy has been a betting favorite in most of his matchups, and he's actually rallied up an impressive win streak. The last time he's lost was actually to Kamaru Usman. So this is a fight that I'm really interested. This is a fight that a lot of people wanted to see happen for a while. They thought that Leon Edwards deserved this title match. Quite a bit back, but Kamaru Usman was kind of busy doing rematches himself against Colby Covington and Jorge Masvidal. So that being said, I think it's kind of nice to see fresh blood step up to the table and challenge Kamaru Usman, even though this is a rematch itself.
No doubt, Jose. And all I got to say is this is going to be a fantastic main event. I mean, Kamaru Usman is rightfully so the pound for pound reigning champion. And every time he steps in the octagon, it's necessary to watch. He's been dominant. He keeps destroying everyone in his path, including legends like Masvidal multiple times, Gilbert Burns, Colby Covington multiple times. I mean, it's just hilarious. This guy's just walked through everybody. And like you said, it is nice to see some fresh blood for Usman. And I think in this case, man, it's going to be an interesting one. I think Leon Edwards brings some interesting things to the table that maybe some other fighters haven't. And I think Leon Edwards, if he plays his cards right, he could put Usman in a spot Usman isn't used to being in. So we'll see. I think Colby Covington did a good job in his multiple times, but obviously wasn't good enough. Lost by decision, and a lot of people would argue, and myself included, that Colby Covington was a little bit kind of shaky in his boots, and he didn't step into being himself until later in those fights. And if Leon Edwards can step out and be himself from the start of the fight, I don't know. Obviously there is some question marks in that the Diaz fight was close, and a lot of people think that Diaz could have easily won that fight, which he could have. But Leon Edwards, I think, rightfully earned the unanimous decision in that fight, and was on his way to. And it was in the second round when they called the no contest. But I think Leon Edwards was on his way to winning that fight as well. I don't know, man. I think Leon Edwards is going to pose one of the biggest threats, arguably Usman seen, in my opinion, in a long time. I think he could push Kamaru Usman even a little further than Covington and Masvidal were able to.
Yeah, Nick, I totally hear what you're saying. On paper, I definitely agree Leon Edwards is the biggest threat. And when I look at his record, his his win streak is by far impressive, but that Nate Diaz fight too, it was close up until that fifth round. It was close at that fifth round. Every round before then, Leon Edwards was definitely winning, and he was going to coast away to a unanimous decision win. And then there was just that one punch that Nate Diaz landed perfectly on his chin that almost put him out. And Nate Diaz actually could have won that fight because I truly believe Leon Edwards was knocked out on his feet. The way he stumbled, he definitely was lights out. All Nate Diaz had to do was not point and laugh and just literally step forward and just throw a few light punches and it would have been over. I truly believe Nate Diaz should have won that if he did not point and laugh. But instead, it just ended up, again, because Leon Edwards was so dominant every other round before that, and even most of that fifth round too, since he was just so dominant until that happened, that's why he ended up getting that decision win at the end. But prior to that too, he was looking really good against Bilal Muhammad too. And Bilal Muhammad is making waves in the welterweight division too, and he was looking good up until that eye poke. It's very unfortunate. And not only that, for years historically, Leon Edwards has been struggling to get good welterweight matchups. For example, there's a reason why he never fought Jorge Masvidal. Him and Jorge Masvidal back in England when Jorge fought Darren Till, they had that backstage altercation and they got in a fight, and everyone thought that was the fight that was going to happen next. And I believe it should have happened. And that's a fight that just kind of slipped away from us, but that would have been a big event as well, Jorge Masvidal versus Leon Edwards. And it could still happen later down the road, but not as much today. And I truly think it did not happen because the UFC was afraid Leon Edwards would beat Jorge Masvidal. But until then, he was just beating. Leon Edwards was mostly beating. I hate to say it, some dudes that used to be lightweights. A lot of dudes that were 155ers and moved up to 170. For example, Donald Cerrone, Brian Barberina, and Rafael Dos Anjos. Those big names, but and Brian Barberina too. Big name mostly in welterweight too. But again, like they're not the top five guys, even though RDA and Donald Cerrone were really close at one point. Again, they're naturally 155ers. Same with Nate Diaz. He's naturally a 155er too. And the other names he's beaten too, Vicente Luque, that's pretty impressive. Peter Sabota, that's very impressive. And Gunnar Nelson, I'm impressed, but you cannot, deny Kamaru Usman's power though. This dude, and not only the names he's being, but like, look at that. He's being Kobe Covington, Jorge Masvidal twice, Tyron Woodley, RDA as well, just like Leon Edwards and Gilbert Burns. And, the one thing that Kamaru Usman has shown too is that he can face adversity. Gilbert Burns almost put him out, and he was able to come back and still win that. So to me, it is going to be a tough matchup, but I don't think it's going to be as tough. I think, especially because Kamaru beat him in the past, I feel like he's going to have that confidence going into this fight, Nick. That's how I personally feel.
Yeah, that's totally fair, Jose. I agree that this is going to be Leon Edwards' biggest challenge. It's quite a step up, not to disrespect Nate Diaz by any means, but I think from fighting Nate Diaz to Kamaru Usman, I mean, Kamaru Usman's currently in his prime. You're going to get the best Usman that exists. And that's one of a top 5 fighter on the planet right now. UFC pound for pound #1, I've mentioned. So this is not going to be a breeze for either one of these guys. I don't anticipate Usman's takedowns to become much of a factor. He does average 3 takedowns per 15 minutes, but it rarely turns into anything more than just a tactic to continue, pressure or get, on someone's back. He doesn't get many submissions, if any submission. I think his only submission win was his debut back in 2015 or something like that. So it's not really that much of a concern. I think Leon Edwards is just going to be able to, use his reach and kind of box him in a way that no one has at this point. So I'm willing to go with the underdog here. I'm gonna make Leon Edwards my pick here. I think like it's gonna go to the championship rounds, in my opinion. This does not end in the first 3. It's just gonna be who in the end has the grit, and that might be what takes Kamaru Usman through. Would just be his ability. He's mentioned in the past that one of his goals is just to break people down to the core and then beat them. But I don't know, man. Leon Edwards is one of those guys that he just might not be able to break. So I'm going to take Leon Edwards, the underdog here. And I think it's going to be a war that doesn't get resolved until at least the fourth round.
Yeah, Nick, I agree. I think this fight, it's hard to say because Leon Edwards does go to decision line. He has not been knocked out at all in his career. So I could see this going all the way, and does have a lot of unanimous decision wins, just like Kamaru Usman. But Kamaru Usman does have he does have the KO power, and to be honest, Nate Diaz almost put out Leon Edwards, and if you look at the punch Nate Diaz almost put out he put out Leon Edwards with, he almost put him out with that right forward jab, and you lean the shoulder over and lean forward. That type of punch is exactly the same type of punch Kamaru Usman threw on Jorge Masvidal when he viciously knocked him out. Now imagine that same punch Nate Diaz threw at Leon Edwards with Kamaru Usman's power. I guarantee you, Leon Edwards would have not been knocked out on his feet. He would have been knocked out on the floor like Jorge Masvidal. And that's the biggest thing to me is that key telling, knowing that Nate Diaz almost put out Leon Edwards with the same type of almost identical punch that Kamaru Usman put out Jorge Masvidal with. That's the biggest thing to me that stands out is will Leon Edwards be able to avoid getting knocked out by Kamaru Usman? Because Kamaru Usman does throw more strikes per minute than Leon Edwards. Kamaru Usman lands 4.66 significant strikes per minute, while Leon Edwards has 2.62. And Leon Edwards has shown to be a little gun shy in the past, kind of like how Tyron Woodley has been gun shy. Leon Edwards has been the same, where he just kind of stands and reads you for a long time, but isn't throwing anything. And to me, that could be his downfall, that he's going to be trying to read Kamaru Usman for so much and try to calculate his moves that Kamaru Usman is just going to close in and step forward and possibly knock him out. And not only that, I do think Kamaru Usman is the better grappler out of the two. So I would not be surprised if Kamaru Usman would want to do to him what he did to Colby Covington and is just take him down and hold him there against the cage and just ground and pound him. I can see this fight going that way. And if it does go to decision, I can see Kamaru Usman just taking Leon Edwards down, holding him there, and beating him down, and to either coast out to a unanimous decision victory or knocking him out if he doesn't do it on the feet. So for this fight, you can throw me down for the reigning champ Kamaru Usman. I think Kamaru Usman is going to be here for a while. I think he's probably going to surpass GSP as one of the greatest welterweights ever, if not the greatest welterweight ever. So that being said, yeah, you can put me down for Kamaru Usman. Whether it's going to be TKO, KO, or decision, I don't know. I can't say again because I can see it playing two ways. Like I said, he rides it out to decision, kind of like how he did with one of the Colby Covington fights, or actually just knock him out like he's did with most of his recent past opponents. So you can just have me Kamaru Usman winning this. No particular method for me.
I'm just saying, be ready for it. Leon Edwards is win this fight, and the trilogy begins. The UFC is going to get rich. It's going to be one of the next big rivalries of the UFC.
Yeah, I would love to see. I would love to see some Nigeria versus Jamaica action. It's gonna be fun. You guys have it there though. I Jose for Kamaru Usman and Nick for the betting underdog Leon Edwards.
Welcome to the betting portion of UFC 278. Presented to you by Nick from Moneyline MMA here. Before we get into the best bets of the week, remember to subscribe to our channel on YouTube and leave a comment down below letting us know what bets you'll be placing this weekend for a huge card being capped off with a welterweight belt on the line. Also, give us a follow on Twitter. We're posting weekly picks on Saturday before the main card starts. Always keep that in mind because things are subject to change on this show just based on things that come out between recording and the Saturday that fights occur on. So that being said, let's get into it. One of our more confident picks, of course, the heaviest favorite on this card, Tyson Pedro at minus 900. Not necessarily saying that's our best bet, but obviously we're both on Tyson, and that will be included in the parlay. We're looking at Romanov, another guy that should win this fight. He's a pretty heavy favorite. Minus 500 usually is good enough for the heaviest favorite on a card. And in this case, it's not. We are, I'm willing to go so far as to bet Romanov by KO specifically. So I would examine that. I'm not seeing odds for that on FanDuel right now, but I would heavily consider betting Romanov by KO in that fight. Moving on to Jose Aldo and Merab. Look, I obviously Jose and I both agreed on Jose Aldo here. He's a slight underdog at minus 102. I think this is a great spot for Aldo. He knows that he just needs one more win for a potential shot at the belt. And Merab is a great fighter, so I'm concerned, definitely betting on Jose Aldo, but in the end, I'll take the veteran presence, and that's another one of our best bets right there is to pick Jose Aldo. Moving on to Paulo Costa. This is going to be wild to see him fighting Luke Rockhold, but regardless, he's minus 340. And honestly, he's another guy that I would definitely bet to win by KO. I think him and Alexander Romanov have great chances here. Luke Rockhold does not go to the distance in any of his fights, really, and Costa either. So I'm going to bet Costa by KO. I'm going to bet Romanov by KO. Those are two of your best bets for Moneyline MMA for sure. And the main event, Jose and I disagreed on. And, I like Leon Edwards. I'm not overly confident in him, right? I think he's got what it takes, but I'm not sure Saturday night's going to be his night. And if it is, then he'll go out of there with the belt, in my opinion. But I think there are more outcomes where Usman wins that fight and retains his belt and his pound for pound number one status. So that being said, we're going to move on to the parlay here. I will put a little bit of money of my side bet money on Leon Edwards this week, but I'm not going to bet too much personally. But that plus 285 is just really like I'm kind of seeing dollar signs there for a guy as good as Leon Edwards. Regardless, let's get onto the parlay. The main three we're looking at here is going to be Tyson Pedro, Alexander Romanov, and we're going to put Jose Aldo on here. The obvious choice would be to put Paulo Costa on there, but we're not going to do that. We're going to put the underdog, the slight underdog, Jose Aldo on there. That three-leg parlay is good for plus 164. Now, simply add in Costa here. You might as well because he's minus 340. He should win the fight. That four leg is plus 241. From here, it's whether or not you take Jose or my side on the main event. I obviously put Leon Edwards in this when I want to come to my side bets, my $15, $20 bets. You'll get plus 12-15 odds on this with the underdog in the main event winning. If you want to take more of a safe route, I don't blame you. It is rare that all the favorites on a main card win, but you could go for the sweep. 5-leg parlay will get you plus 327. Personally, I'm not putting any of my money on that, but I don't talk you out of it because it is a safe bet. There's no question about it. But personally, I'm going to be chasing that underdog, Leon Edwards, for plus 12-15 on the 5-leg. So that about wraps it up. I believe next week is the first week in quite some time that we won't have any UFC fights. So we won't be releasing a video next week likely, but continue to watch out for new content coming out from us and updates to the channel throughout the year. So yeah, thanks if you guys made it this far. Definitely remember to subscribe and follow us on Twitter. Otherwise, I'll see you guys at the end of the month.